is here. This is taken from somewhere in important Agile testing lore, and I haven't done my homework. James stashed these things in. I didn't look up the citations. I should have done that. My apologies. It's bad to do that. But continue. Fortunately, I hope they're not very controversial, at least, which is our highest priority to satisfy the customer through the delivery of valuable software. I think, is that from the Agile Manifesto itself?
Yeah. These are the principles behind it.
That's right, that's from the principles document. That's right, that's right, that's right. Continuous attention to technical excellence and good design enhances agility. So this was the sort of implications of the manifesto. And I think any reasonable people who are interested in trying to maintain agility would agree with those things. So that's what's interesting there. On this side, we have the idea of building the product, and on this side, we have the idea of studying the product, synthesizing versus analyzing. And these things are cyclic as well. They go back and forth, and they alternate, and they're on a continuum, and they wiggle around. It's kind of like, it's like an electron. You know, the classical model of electrons has them orbiting in these neat circles, but that's not the way it actually works. The electron is jumping all over the place like this. So there's alternation this way, and there's alternation this way, and it's all jumping around all the time. But we're always somewhere on these two continuums. There's another two continuums that we're on too. The idea of envisioning success, leading into the builder mindset, and focusing on building the product, and then anticipating failure, which leads into the tester mindset, and which causes, is envisioned, or that's the word I'm looking for, wrapped up in the idea of defocusing on the little tiny elements and looking at the big picture sometimes, and anticipating failure. But, you know, both of these are related to one another, and we're bouncing along those two continuum too. Here's the thing I wanted to talk about with respect to the mindset. This stuff in here, this stuff, especially the stuff down in this corner of the quadrants, is programmerly. It's the builder's mindset. It's the activity of people putting this stuff together. This stuff up here is testerly. People, somebody telling me it's time to stop? Oh my goodness. That's a dear friend who's not very well. But I'm going to have to put it away to avoid the distraction. The business analyst is somebody who lives in here, in this space, but you know, we all actually kind of collaborate here. I think, though, there is a distinct difference between these two mindsets that's really hard to shift on the fly and from moment to moment. I find that when I'm programming, it's very difficult for me to get out of the tester mindset and just focus on getting something built and getting something done. Similarly, as the tester, it's very difficult to me to focus on the building part sometimes. It's not that it's impossible, it's just really hard to be on two sides of the mountain at the same time. And I think most of us in this room who are testers get that the builder mindset is different from the tester mindset, and that it's okay for it to be so, and that roles are a useful heuristic for organizing that kind of work. If you want to be a developer, and if you want to test code, you've got to pop out of the developer's mindset to do a really fantastic job of testing that code. And if you want to be a tester, and you want to develop some code, say to build a tool, you have to sort of drop a little bit of your natural tendency to critique a product, otherwise you'll never get the damn thing built, right? So I'm not saying that these two things are in opposition to each other exactly, although, you know, on a diagram they appear to be. It's just, it's really hard to switch. It's really hard to change hats. I notice that when I go home, it's really hard for me to stop being a tester sometimes, or to stop being a teacher sometimes. Something which my daughter is kind of okay with, but my wife, quite justifiably, is not anxious to take the brunt of. God bless her, she has to do that rather more often than I'd care to admit. We don't claim that there have to be any testers on an Agile team. Anybody with a job title named tester. We don't say that. We think it's an awfully good idea, but we don't make the claim that it has to be that way. But if you choose for it not to be that way, you've got a problem. You're going to have to put in some kind of funicular railway or a tram or something like that to get people up and get people down here, and it's not necessarily going to be an easy ski run downhill either. Hello?
Yeah, can I ask you something? You said earlier that a developer can do some testing and he might do some great testing if he took some time investing in that. Would you say, and now you're sort of saying a developer can't be a tester and the other way around, or swap
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I'm not saying the developer can't be a tester. No way.
No, but you can't swap that easily.
It's hard to do that. I'm saying that it's hard. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying that it's effortful to change a mindset like that.
But would it be, if you are a developer or if you are a tester, would you be a better tester or developer if you have done the other role?
My experience, my personal experience with that is yes. I dabbled at programming. It made me a much better tester because I realized, first of all, I had a job as a programmer before I had a job as a tester. I was responsible for testing my own work, though. And so being a developer in that sense sharpened my testing skills, because it had. So then there was something else that I noticed after I'd been a tester for a while, that when I really wanted to button down and start to learn how to do really good programming, work closely with some programmers and sharpen my skills there, having been a tester helped with that. But then there was something else that learning programming really helped me as a tester. It helped me through three important specific ways. Number one, it enlightened me to the kinds of problems that code can have, because I had those problems in my code. I learned about the kind of mistakes that programmers can make. I learned how difficult it is to model and how easy it is to blow your model, right? What Joel Spolsky would call a leaky abstraction. I learned how leaky abstractions could be, and I learned how easy it was to blow that. Second, I learned to develop tools. I learned that, hey, if I can envision something and program it, then I got some tools to work with. Yay! And finally, I learned when I started getting serious about studying programming and was a programmer again for a little while, I learned deep humility. Because the machine did exactly what I told it to do. All the time. Never failed. Whatever stupid thing I told the machine to do, the machine would amplify and magnify and put a lens, a microscope, huge blown up view of how incompetent I could be from time to time. And that informed my work as a tester, because I stopped doing this thing, which I thought before, that's an easy fix. Right? I realized, first of all, it wasn't an easy mistake to make, probably because these are people who've been working for a long time. The odds are that it would not be an easy mistake to make, and the odds are it would not be an easy fix either. So I recommend, if you ever, as a tester, you have the inclination to learn programming, go for it. Learn some of it. It'll be valuable for you. If you don't have that inclination, don't worry about it too much. Don't worry about it too much, because there's many other ways you can be valuable as a tester. Nonetheless, I think it's probably a pretty good idea. And I think it's this is one of the things that really upsets me about Agile sometimes. Programmers pay a lot of lip service to testing, but I see so few people in the Agile community who are advocating a really deep, thorough study of testing, of what testing means. Which means, I think, a study of heuristics and biases. It means a study of critical thinking. It means buying yourself a copy of Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow and burying yourself in it for several weeks. It means learning about logical fallacies. It means learning about programming. But programmers usually have that part covered. It means learning about how to communicate what you're writing. Sometimes programmers are really great at writing for machines and not that great at writing for, say, the consumers of a testing report. It means learning how to use cheap, lightweight approaches to finding answers to important questions. Lots and lots and lots of different things. Scientific thinking, the history of science and the history of philosophy. Testing involves a lot of philosophy. Seems to me, I see a few enough people in the testing community who are like that, and I see very few people in the Agile community who want to take on that deep study of testing. That deep study of what it means to do science. That deep study of what it means to do qualitative research. The deep study of what it means to do measurement. And I think as well, the STEAMy stuff. Not just STEM, not just science, technology, engineering, mathematics, but adding the A part. We had a wonderful presentation at the CAST conference where we had an academic talking to us about how important it was for pedagogy, teaching, in engineering communities these days to introduce art. Then I had a conversation with a friend of my wife, a guy who's an artist and a software tester, who has an engineering degree. And he said when he graduated from engineering school, you had to take several arts courses. And his dad, who was an engineering professor, advocated that really strongly. So if you do that, if you get involved with that, then you end up with people like Ruth, who has done some really remarkable stuff in envisioning testing from a graphical kind of perspective, telling stories of testing with some beautiful illustrations and art. I stand in awe of Ruth because he's done all this stuff that I wish I had time to study and wish I had time to try out. But if you're not aware of his work and what he's done with illustrating testing ecosystems, go home and cancel appointments and pour yourself a nice glass of port and pour over his stuff for a couple of hours. It's unbelievable. I love it. Critical distance. Yeah.
There was a small dot, was called business analyst.
Business analyst, yes.
Yeah, and you didn't elaborate on that. I'm very curious how, because you focus on testing developer skills, how does the business analyst fit in all, and how can they make a change between testing and development?
Stay tuned for our next exciting slide. Actually, it's the one after this one. If you're in the building mindset and you want to do shallow testing, that's relatively easy. Right? I mean, if you look at a specific function, and look at the inputs to that function, and you read the lines of code in which that function transforms some piece of data into another piece of data, and picks up some stuff here and puts some stuff there and so on. If you want to do that kind of testing, that's pretty easy to do at what we call close critical distance. The distance between one perspective and another. But to do deep testing, suspicious, imaginative testing, that stuff up here, that's harder. You got to go around Mount Mindset. Seems to me. So, deeper testing, the kind of testing that involves visiting this area, is hard to do from the builder's mindset because you got to go through a longer loop, a longer cycle.
Any idea behind the colors?
Testing mindset, building mindset, and then in
The
between.
greener the better?
What's that?
The greener the better?
Green are gone and the red are broke.
I'm colorblind. Well, I'm not really colorblind. No, I'm just kidding. They are arbitrary choices. They're not. It's not.
It's rather thin.
The greener the better is true in environmental
I
matters.
think on the previous slide, the developers were green and the testers were red.
Oh, I see what you mean. You see, oh, there you go. So it is arbitrary. Thank goodness. But the blue stuff is interesting because the blue stuff is in what we call a trading zone. Peter Gallison introduced this idea, and Harry Collins elaborated on it in various interesting ways. In science, you get a bunch of people together in order to develop something or to learn something. Like, for example, my favorite example is nanotechnology to deliver drugs inside a human body. Right? They're little nanobots that go inside and travel around the blood system. I think fantastic voyage, right? But nowadays we got stuff that's a lot like that. So you got to get together roboticists, engineers, pharmacologists, biologists, doctors. Anytime you're involved in creating something complicated, like the Da Vinci laparoscopy surgery machines, my God, what a diverse collection of talents and skills and languages and mindsets you have to get in order to get those people together to build something that really works. Because you need computer technologists, you need doctors, and you need certain kinds of specialist doctors, you need surgeons. If they're going to do cancer-oriented stuff with it, you need oncologists, you need microscopists, you need engineers, you need people who are going to develop displays, information architecture designers. You need lots of different people, and they all speak different languages and come from different places. Peter Gallison came up with this metaphor when, suppose you're at a seaport someplace, and there's a guy with a wagon full of leather and a guy with a boatload of fish. And the first problem they have to solve is, wait a second, he speaks Portuguese and he speaks Italian. So they're going to have to sort out how they're going to communicate with each other. Then they're going to have to sort out what kind of money they're going to use. Then they're going to have to sort out how much fish is worth how much leather.
Euros.
Euros. These days, yes, sort of, kind of, but that's just a transport mechanism. Because ultimately what they're talking about is exchange, right? So this metaphor applies when we have to develop a new language and we have to develop a new architecture for understanding how to understand each other. Now Collins went deeper on this idea. Sometimes there's enforced trading zones, like with galley slaves. Well, the enforced trading zone is the Roman soldiers have a service they want provided, and the galley slaves have a service to provide, and you can enforce that. You can get work and good stuff done out of other people. But then there's this interlanguage stuff that's collaborated. Then there's other stuff where there are objects which are used as media of transaction, like euros, right? Then there's also coercive, homogeneous kinds of trading zones, where we need to develop a model where people can come to agreement on something even though they don't necessarily really agree with it or it doesn't necessarily really affect them. There's lots of stuff to go into there, and it's getting late, so I'm not going to. So, here's our whole, for want of a better word, we call it an ecosystem. Testing lives in all the different quadrants. Development lives in all the different quadrants, and we travel together. There's no separate phases. There's no driving phase, followed by a looking out the windshield phase. It all happens at the same time. It's a fractal instruction. It's a collaborative. There are areas of specialty and areas where we meet. There are people, humans involved in every aspect of it. We're focused on the tester at the center of the testing work, the programmer at the center of the programming work, and we can all be friends and we can all benefit from each other's skill. And we can take a really deep dive into what it programming and what it means to do testing. And we can, I think, continue to go deeper. This is just a start. It occurred to me at one point that really we could do a talk on each line, on each one of these things, on each one of these things. So this is just the beginning of how we're going to talk about Agile testing and rapid testing in an Agile context over the next little while. And my great hope is that people continue to test this work and to help us sharpen it, help us refine it as time goes by. Thank you very much. Holy Jesus, can I talk a long time? You had a question?
Yeah, you dropped quadrants and you call it ecosystem. You also told us that programming and development is in as much as testing. So why is it still a testing ecosystem? Why not just an agile ecosystem?
Because this is the way we talk about testing, and we don't want to sort of claim hegemony over the whole thing. This is how we're trying to relate Agile testing and rapid testing in this whole thing. Our interest is mostly in testing. So I'm here to talk about testing. If we wanted to talk about the whole development, I'd keep you here even longer and you wouldn't want.
So, Michael, now we have a more reliable model of the quadrants. How do you propose we use it?
I propose you use it as a point of departure for thinking about testing in a deeper way, in a more complex way. First of all, it's only a model, right? Just as the old one is only a model, we think it's a more representative model in many ways, but hey, you can use it in whatever way you like. How I'm going to use it is I'm going to use it to explain how rapid testing and Agile testing meet, how they intersect, how we can form a bridge between these two approaches, Agile development, Agile testing, how we can recognize that testing is testing, rapid testing is rapid testing, and Agile is context. We have a gent at the back.
Yeah, why testing twice?
Right, what's that?
Why testing twice?
Why testing twice? Where do you see it twice?
RST?
Rapid software testing is our, what's the word? Brand, our philosophy, our little mini school inside the bigger school of context-driven testing. So RST is something we're identified with, rapid software testing. It's still twice? Would you like me to put a slash here? Is that, no? It's redundant. You know, I spent several years working at a government organization, the Department of Redundancy Department. So occasionally I slip back into my old way. That's a nice little point. But we could do it by saying the rapid / Agile testing ecosystem. I'll take that comment and run it by James and see if we treat it as a severity. But if it's a showstopper, a severity one thing. Something that makes more sense to fix than it does to ship. Thanks for
If you have namespace in front of it anyway, then you're not claiming it for everyone. So you could just drop the testing anyway.
Yeah, we can do that. We can do that.
So-
Oh, wait, I gotta give this to people who ask questions. There you go.
Well, thank you, Michael, so much for joining us. Yay!
You did, for sure.
Thank you all for
You
coming.
did.
I think there might be some beers in the back, but I'm